I walked into my kitchen and saw smoke. Real smoke. My mother stood over the stove, holding a stack of papers in one hand, a lighter in the other. On the counter, flames devoured what looked like the contract. I had just signed the one worth $3 million. "If you won't share it," she said coldly, "you don't deserve this deal." I stared at her, and then burst out laughing. Because what she didn't know, what she could never have guessed, was that the real contract had already been signed, secured, and submitted digitally. What she just burned was a courtesy printout. But to understand why my mother would go this far, and why I laughed instead of screamed, you need to hear the whole story. About favoritism, control, success, and the day I finally said no. This wasn't just about money. It was about freedom, and I had finally earned mine. I used to think I was just being dramatic, that maybe I was imagining the favoritism, that maybe, just maybe, my mother's constant praise for my sister Camille wasn't as excessive as it felt. But when you grow up watching your sister get the bigger bedroom, the better gifts, the louder applause for doing far less, you stop questioning the pattern. You start understanding it. Camille was the golden child. Beautiful, charming, always someone else's project to save or praise. When she quit piano, my mom said, "She's finding herself." When I graduated with honors, she said, "That's nice. Honey, did you hear Camille got cast in the community play?" I learned early that love in our house was conditional. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how quietly I succeeded. Camille's messes were always more urgent than my milestones. So I stopped seeking their approval. I carved my own path they didn't care to ask about. I studied nights while working retail jobs. I didn't party. I didn't crash cars or come crying for bail money. I just built, quietly, relentlessly. By the time I was 27, I had founded a small tech startup with 2 friends from college. We focused on designing mobile accessibility tools, nothing flashy, just something useful. After years of grants, side gigs, and one disastrous investor meeting in a Starbucks bathroom, don't ask, we finally had something scalable. And then came the offer. A mid-size healthcare firm wanted to license our tool for $3 million. We'd retain partial rights too. I cried when I saw the final numbers. Not because I didn't think we were worth it, but because for the first time, someone outside my family saw my value. They didn't love me for Camille's sake. They wanted me, on merit. I signed the agreement late on a Thursday afternoon, hands trembling from equal parts disbelief and pride. It wasn't about luxury or ego. It was about proof. Proof that I had done this on my own. I printed a hard copy at home, not for legal reasons, just for the satisfaction of holding something I built in my hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about what it would mean to finally pay off my student loans, donate to the literacy center that once saved me, maybe even buy a small home outright. It never occurred to me once that my own mother would try to take it from me the very next day. But then again, it wasn't really about the money for her. It was about control. And Camille. I told myself I'd wait a week before sharing the news with my family. Just enough time to breathe, to lock down some financial planning, maybe even let the shock wear off. But something in me wasn't pride, not exactly just wanted them to know. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they finally saw me. Not the background character in Camille's chaotic highlight reel, but me, the builder, the achiever, the woman who had made it. So I brought a bottle of wine to Sunday dinner. It was one of those quiet evenings where the house smelled like overcooked roast and old carpet. Camille was, of course, late. My mother was already halfway into a complaint about parking tickets ruining her week. My dad sat silently scrolling through his phone. When I finally said it, I signed a $3 million contract on Friday. There was a pause. A long one. Then came the shrill sound of a fork clattering to a plate. My mom blinked. "Wait, what?" I closed a deal. It's official. We're licensing the accessibility tech I've been building for the last few years. "You mean, like an app?" Camille chimed in, just walking through the door and dropping her purse on the floor like it was a throne room. "How much did you say again?" $3 million. My mother was on her feet. Oh my God, Elise, that's unbelievable. She actually hugged me. It was so rare, so performative. It felt like being embraced by a stranger. Then, predictably, Camille, isn't that incredible? Camille gave me a wide, gleaming smile. Wow, that's amazing. Really, so proud of you. There was something behind her eyes. A flicker. Then she added, and you know, maybe now you could help me finally open that fashion studio I've been dreaming of. I froze. I hadn't even finished one glass of wine. The ink on the contract wasn't even dry in my mind. And already, it wasn't about me. My mother nodded vigorously. Yes, this is the perfect moment, Elise. Your sister's dream has been on hold for too long. You two could even collaborate your tech, her creativity, family success story. I put my glass down slowly. I'm not giving Camille part of my deal, I said, voice calm. She's not part of the business. This wasn't a group project. And just like that, the air changed. The warmth evaporated. And the storm began. You can't be serious, my mother said, her smile tightening like a drawstring. You've always been so generous. No, I replied. I've always been accommodating. That's different. Camille let out a breathy laugh, like she thought I was joking. Come on, Elise. I'm not asking for half. Just enough to get started. 50,000. 70 max. You'll still have, what, millions? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence itself was its own rebellion. My mother folded her arms. After everything we've done for you, helping you through school, giving you a roof? You mean the year I couch surfed after you turned my bedroom into Camille's yoga studio? I said, more tired than angry. She blinked, caught off guard by the memory. Or maybe just by the fact that I brought it up at all. Camille's voice softened. I just thought, after all the years we've been there for each other, you'd show up for me now. The way she said, we, made me nauseous, as if she had ever once shown up for me. I stood, pushing my chair back gently. I came here to share good news, not to be tripped into handing over a chunk of something I've worked for years to earn. Elise, my mother warned, this is a family. We don't succeed alone. I stared at her. Camille's had 3 failed ventures in 4 years. You funded every one, and now you want to use my success to clean up another mess? You're being dramatic, she snapped. You sound ungrateful. I shook my head. I sound different because for once I'm not bending. There it was. The moment their disappointment turned to disgust. Not just at my decision, but at the fact that I wasn't ashamed of it. That night, I went home to a flurry of texts. Camille sent me screenshots of starter budgets, complete with emoji hearts and lines like, just imagine what we could build together. My mother's messages were more direct. You're breaking this family apart over money. And my favorite, don't make me regret raising you. I turned off my phone, sat in the dark, let the silence stretch. They weren't angry because I was selfish. They were angry because I was no longer available to be used. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have predicted, was how far they'd go to force me back into my old role. But I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke up to find 10 missed calls, 3 from Camille, the rest from my mother. No voicemails, just the quiet threat of their persistence. By noon, my inbox had a new message. Subject, urgent, family meeting tonight. My mother had copied me, Camille, and even my father, who usually kept his head down and his opinions to himself. The body of the email was simple. We'll be at your apartment at 7 p.m. sharp. Bring your contract and your financial plan. We need to discuss how this opportunity benefits the entire family. Not if, not can we. Just we will and you must. I stared at the screen, heat rising in my chest. Not anger, clarity. They weren't asking. They were laying claim. My success wasn't mine in their eyes. It was simply an asset waiting to be redistributed. I replied with one line. I won't be home, and my finances are not a group project. The response came within minutes. My mother. This behavior is deeply disappointing. I raised you better than this. What Camille is asking for is so little, and your refusal is a reflection of selfishness, not strength. I didn't respond. I turned my phone off again. But the knot in my stomach kept growing. That afternoon, I met with my attorney for the first time. A quiet, meticulous woman named Olivia Park, who came highly recommended for contract negotiations and asset protection. After I filled her in, she nodded once and said, "We'll update your mailing address, set up a P.O. box, and file a no-access clause on your contract documentation, just in case." I didn't even need to explain why I was worried. She'd seen enough families try to claw their way into other people's victories. By the time I got home, my locks felt less secure than they used to. I slept uneasily that night. Shadows in the hallway made me flinch. Every car door outside made my pulse jump. And yet I still didn't expect what happened next. Because I thought, somehow, that love had limits. That blood drew boundaries. I forgot that entitlement doesn't need permission. It just needs opportunity. It happened on a Tuesday. I had taken a late lunch and returned to my apartment just past 2 p.m. The building was unusually quiet, which I attributed to midweek office hours. I didn't expect anyone to be around. But as I slid my key into the door, I froze. The handle was warm. Not hot, but warm. When I pushed it open, the smell hit me first burning paper. Sharp, chemical, unmistakable. And then I saw her. My mother stood in my kitchen, a half-empty lighter in her hand. On the countertop, a small fire crackled inside a ceramic dish I used for fruit. The flames were already halfway through what I instantly recognized, a printout of my contract. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. "If you won't share it," she said coolly, not turning around, "then you don't deserve this deal." Behind her, Camille stood near the fridge, clutching her purse like it might protect her from guilt. She looked stunned, but not enough to intervene. I stared at the fire, trying to process what I was seeing. "You broke into my home," I said, my voice level but hollow. "You used the old key." My mother shrugged. "You never asked for it back. And we needed to talk." I moved toward the counter, but it was too late. The flames had consumed the contract's header and most of the body. Just the signature line remained, curling black at the edges. I looked up at her, really looked. Her expression wasn't remorseful. It was triumphant. She thought she had won. "You think burning that changes anything?" I asked, half laughing now. "That wasn't even the real contract." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me, Elise." I shook my head. "I'm not. The real contract was signed digitally and sent through secure cloud servers last week. The document you just burned was a courtesy printout for my own files." For a moment, silence. Then confusion. Then panic. My mother turned toward Camille, her face falling. You're bluffing," she snapped. "You're just saying that because I destroyed it." Without a word, I walked to my desk drawer, pulled out my laptop, and opened the email from the company's legal team. With 3 clicks, I pulled up the signed, time-stamped contract. The screen glowed as I turned it toward them. "Still think this was your leverage?" Camille let out a small, involuntary gasp. My mother stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. "You broke into my apartment," I said slowly, deliberately. "You destroyed something you thought was vital to my career because you were angry that I refused to be controlled." My mother's voice cracked. "We were just trying to bring you back to reality." "No," I said, stepping back. "You were trying to burn down the one thing you couldn't own, and that terrifies you." Camille spoke for the first time. "Mom said it was just going to be a conversation. She didn't tell me she'd do this." I laughed bitterly. "Conversation? You two set fire to my boundary, hoping to smoke out my guilt." I looked at both of them, suddenly feeling nothing but clarity. No pain, no desire to fix this. Just resolve. "You need to leave," I said. "Now. Before I call the police." My mother's mouth opened, then closed again. She looked, for the first time in my life, uncertain. Camille followed her out, eyes averted. When the door clicked shut behind them, I locked it. Twice. Then I sat on the floor, shaking, laughing, crying. Not because they hurt me, but because they failed to. They tried to destroy me and burned the wrong damn page. The moment the door shut behind them, I didn't move for a long time. The scent of smoke still clung to the air, the last blackened edge of the contract still curling on my counter. But it wasn't the loss of paper that lingered, it was the loss of illusion. Whatever faint hope I'd clung to, that maybe they didn't know better, that maybe they just didn't understand me, was gone. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they did it anyway. That evening, I packed a duffel bag and called Rachel. "Do you have space for a refugee?" I said, voice shaking. "Always," she replied without missing a beat. I stayed at her apartment for 3 nights. Not because I was afraid of physical danger, though, maybe I should have been, but because I no longer felt safe in my own home. And that's a boundary no one should ever cross. The next morning, I met with Olivia again. She didn't blink when I described what happened. "They burned a copy of your contract," she said, "on your kitchen counter? And used a key I forgot they still had," I added. She nodded. Then we act. By noon, she had filed a cease and desist letter addressed to both my mother and Camille, citing trespassing, destruction of property, and unlawful entry. It wasn't about pressing charges yet. It was about documentation, about establishing precedent. Because as Olivia said, people who cross one boundary rarely stop at one. We also moved fast on securing my finances. New bank account numbers, a full address scrub, biometric ID verification for all future transactions. I even changed my locks and had a home security system installed the next day. But maybe the most important step? I finally sat with my therapist and said the words I'd never said out loud before. My mother does not protect me. She punishes me for existing outside her control. It felt like betrayal to say it, but it was the beginning of my freedom. Back at Rachel's that night, we drank wine and rewatched a show we both loved in college. I laughed for real, belly laughed for the first time in weeks. And somewhere between the second glass and a scene about 2 sisters reconciling over a burnt pie, I whispered, "She really thought she could burn it all down." Rachel looked at me, a small smirk on her lips. "She tried, but turns out you're fireproof." It's strange how quiet peace can be. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of expectation, of manipulation, of emotional landmines disguised as love. Back at my own apartment, with new locks, cameras, and a digital security system, I finally felt alone in the best possible way. Alone meant free. The contract funds were processed 3 weeks later. The money appeared in my account with a cold, emotionless transfer, no confetti, no parade. Just numbers. And yet, those numbers represented something far more valuable than cash: ownership. Over my work, my voice, my direction. I hired a financial advisor and, together with Olivia, began mapping out a future that felt grounded. No sudden yachts or designer shopping sprees. Just stability. Cleared student loans. A modest 2-bedroom condo in a quiet, secure building. Seed funding for a second project. This time one I'd have full creative control over. And a long overdue donation to a nonprofit that helps young women break cycles of family financial abuse. I also began therapy twice a week. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix myself, I was trying to understand myself. How I had learned to survive in silence. How I had confused endurance for love. In the background, the silence from my family was almost louder than their previous noise. They weren't done. Of course, there were still passive-aggressive texts from Camille, guilt-laced voicemails from my mother, and one utterly tone-deaf email from my father titled, "Can we just move on already?" I didn't respond. But not out of anger, out of clarity. I wasn't obligated to rebuild a house that had always locked me outside. Instead, I began spending more time with people like Rachel, friends who celebrated me without conditions. I hosted a small dinner at my new place, just 6 people, homemade pasta, and laughter that didn't feel borrowed or performative. I also started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. not for publication, just to reclaim my own voice, free from my mother's corrections and Camille's interruptions. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I received a message from a former professor. Heard about the deal. You always had something quietly brilliant in you. Glad the world's seeing it now. I cried reading it. Not because of the praise, but because it was the first time someone acknowledged both parts of me. Quiet and brilliant. It was late autumn when I got the message from Camille. The subject line was simple. I owe you an apology. I hesitated before opening it. My therapist had warned me, remorse is not the same as accountability. But as I read the email, something felt different this time. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, she wrote. Not just the contract, or Mom, or the fire, though God knows I'll never forget that, but about us, about how I've treated you. I used to tell myself I wasn't part of the problem, that I just went along with things. But going along with harm is harm. I'm sorry. I sat still for a long time. Not angry, not relieved, just human. For once, Camille wasn't asking. She wasn't justifying. She wasn't dressing manipulation up as a favor. She was simply taking responsibility. She ended with a line that stayed with me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I finally see you, not just as my sister, but as a whole person I never bothered to understand. Weeks later, we met at a small cafe halfway between our apartments. She looked different, more grounded, less polished. Her makeup was minimal, and for the first time I could remember, she didn't try to dominate the room with her entrance. I'm working at a bookstore now, she said, sipping black coffee. Part-time, but I like it, it's honest. I nodded. That sounds good. We didn't talk about the contract, or the fire, or even our mother. We just talked like sisters, not competitors, not rivals, not roles assigned by someone else. It wasn't a reconciliation, not yet, but it was a beginning. And this time, it was on my terms. A year after the day my mother tried to burn my contract, I stood on the balcony of my new home, sunlight washing over my skin, coffee warm in my hands. The air smelled like fresh rain and rosemary. The money was still in the account. The business was growing. But more than that, I had grown. My story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving them wrong. It was about learning to choose myself. Over guilt, over performance, over fear. They burned paper and thought they could set fire to my future. But the real contract? It wasn't in the document. It was in me.